Psycho.
Hitchcock,
yeah.
It
snap,
just
snap,
does
snap.
it just does Psycho, the shower scene, but instead of a murderer, it's just a cane toad, and it treats it like it's like
Did you see the Simpsons referenced it where Bart versus Australia, where it ends with him introducing a single cane toad to the environment? No.
Oh, no.
As they fly away, Lisa's like, "That's what happens when you introduce a new species."
Right.
Which is
the docs about.
I always thought it was super weird. Right, it's referencing that real event.
Yeah.
In Australia, but I also thought it was super weird that Bart only brought one cane toad. How did it become millions of cane toads?
Right. If it was only one.
That's toad sex.
It'd have
fellas.
to. It'd have to be pregnant when it got there.
Oh, maybe his toad was pregnant. So this is Frame Rate, the show where we rate frames.
Yeah.
It sneaked up on you like a documentary about cane toads in Australia.
Wow.
Or a murderer in Psycho.
Michael.
And yet it has nothing to do with either of those things. Cane Toads is just a great doc that any film buff should check out. So I thought,
Yeah, it's like a playful doc.
thought we'd get that recommendation on tape. But today we're talking about Thelma and Louise. Here on Frame Rate, we have three voices you're going to hear. I'm Michael Swain.
I'm Abe Epperson.
I'm Maggie.
Maggie's back.
Hi.
Hey,
I came
she's
back.
She's Mayfish.
Maggie's back.
Whoa.
This movie was a request, right?
This movie, we definitely want to shout out Vivian Liu, who our very generous patron, who joined the Pick the Flick tier, and picked Thelma and Louise. So it wasn't on our list, but I think it's a really great pick.
It's a great one.
We've also done Green Room at the behest of a patron. So this is really fun.
She wanted you.
Oh, yeah, and she requested you especially.
Thanks, Vivian.
So I think she probably expects some signature Maggie Mae Fish takes on Thelma and Louise. Right. So why don't you just get us going with whatever comes to mind first?
Right.
Well, so this is actually the second time I've seen it.
Oh, that was my question.
Yes.
Okay.
The first time, I went in not knowing anything. It had not been spoiled for me. I didn't know any of the anything about it.
How long ago was that?
It was probably like 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Maybe more recent than that. This is my second time. There are things that I love about it, and there are things that I'm just like, okay, that don't seem to mean anything.
Okay, so it's more an okay of neutrality, like it's okay.
Yeah.
Not like okay, I'm super disappointed, just it's fine.
I'm not super. I think this is a solid movie.
Not
think of an
terrible
example
moments.
of that's fine.
Well, okay, so for me, it's I think a lot of people see this as an LGBTQ film, and for me, it doesn't have any of that.
It doesn't have anything to do with that per se.
I don't think so. I think it's a more feminist critique, but
definitely, and you could only really see that in the sense that anything that's pro equal rights for all human beings, you're well, then it's implicitly pro trans rights. Sure.
Right.
But it's not about that. It's about sexism, specifically gendered cis sexism.
Yeah. Although I do think that it has a life of its own as a queer film.
Yeah.
And and there was none of that. And so that's a little disappointing. It was a little slow throughout most of it.
I don't feel that way, but okay.
Yeah. And to be fair, I cried throughout the whole last third. I was a sobbing, wrecking mess. And I always am when I watch this. It's very depressing. It's very sad. And maybe because as a woman watching it, it felt like I don't need to be told this story because it almost hits too close to home. And then they die, which is great because
it's great. It's just great.
It is great because there is no way to fix sexism. And
with a movie, right.
Well, or just in life.
It's great that it didn't pull the punch.
Yeah,
but
it didn't pull the punch. No, it's so sad, and it's to me, it's a very depressing film, and also going through my own lens of watching it. One is. I always mix them up. Who's Thelma and who's Louise? But one of them is very naive.
That's Gina Davis.
Gina Davis.
Thelma.
She's
what
Gina
you doing,
Davis is
Thelma?
amazing.
You crazy, Thelma?
You're crazy,
yeah,
Thelma.
She's
You're being crazy. I was always crazy, Louise.
Yeah, their performances are great. But yeah, she's so naive that it's like, I used to be that naive, and she gets in so much trouble for it, and that's so sad. And it like was like, that was like basically me. And then like Susan Sarandon is the opposite. She's so jaded that like that's sad. And there's no middle grade. It's just, to me, it's a well of sadness. It's like
right. Yeah,
it's an
it's
observation
revealed.
that seems true, which is that, there's no winning.
There's no winning.
With the system currently the way it is, right?
Which I think
you
is
either be
pointed and
naive,
important.
which puts you at risk for horrible things, and maybe you get lucky and it never happens, or you don't, or you have to always live in a state of not necessarily fear, but like defensive posture,
right?
If you want to be fully protected, right?
Which is like such a it's so depressing to watch, because like that's what it is. It's like you're either one or the other. You're both fucked, and in the end you die. But that is also what makes it brilliant. So it is great, and it is also sad and
at
hard
least
to watch.
it's an unflinching observation.
That's what a movie should be if it's going to reflect society.
Directed
right?
by a dude, Ridley Scott,
which
is surprising.
Yeah,
it's it's interesting.
In
that
my
it's Ridley
opinion,
Scott.
his second best direction.
The first question I wrote is, could this be Ridley Scott's best made film?
I think it
Alien.
I know that Alien. I don't even
Alien than this.
I don't like Alien nearly as much as Aliens. And I think I might like this better than Alien. I really like Thelma and Louise. And I also noticed, but I will tip my doff the cap that I never wear to Ridley Scott. There's something about dread and being hunted that brings out the best directing and filmmaking in him. Because I never connected that it was Ridley Scott, but watching it this time and knowing that when in the last third they are being hunted and things like the helicopter sneaks up on them from the canyon below.
Yeah.
The way that, and it's also really weird that the score is Hans Zimmer.
I know. When
It's
it
the
came
dude
up, I was
who does
like,
the
what?
Dark Knight
And he
score.
kills it.
And he kills
Yeah.
it, but it sounds nothing like the Hans
No.
Zimmer you're used to, except towards the end
Young
when he gets a
Hans.
little Zimmery to build
The young
dread.
Hans.
But when they're being hunted, it is straight up like, I feel as tense as I did in Alien. Like he's so good at the idea that you're being hunted.
Yeah,
he's good at those shots.
The one biggest thing, my biggest problem with this film that I realized on the second time around is, so they have basically the whole like detective character.
Harvey Keitel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. White.
Because they have him be this like kind, like throughout the whole thing, he's giving them benefit of the doubt, where it's like, well, I don't know why they don't talk to the police, and that bothered me this time, all the way half of it, and they spend so much of the movie explaining why they can't go to the police that it was like,
because it's hard to explain, because in real life there were many chances to go to the
there were
police.
so many, and the reason that they have that guy in just feels like this, like, no offense, but like male savior, like, oh look, this guy believes you, this guy's great. They should have just had him not believe it, and this whole thing makes so much more sense. That's why they're running.
Like
that's why they can't.
The FBI guy was the only guy. He didn't believe them, and he wanted snipers set up. That would make more sense that they wouldn't want to go in.
Yeah, it was like, then you don't have to spend 80% of the movie re-explaining again and again.
By the
why.
way, is Stephen Tobolowsky, best known from Groundhog Day as Needle Nose Ned Rice.
What?
I love that he's like, to Harvey Keitel, he's like, you're starting to annoy me now. I'm like, you, Ned Ryerson? You're going to accuse Harvey Keitel of being annoying? Couple things about that. I totally agree and see why you get that impression. And I think that's true and that's there. I think Harvey, I don't know why I feel compelled to throw this in to just get angry tweets. Harvey Keitel's always been overrated. He's just okay always. But also, I think I see what they were trying to do, which is, for better or worse, and I agree with you that it's like, but this is already an undertold story. Why do you need to wedge in not all men?
Right.
But I literally think Harvey Keitel is not all men. I think there were people saying, well, this is a big four-quadrant movie.
Yeah.
What are we saying? All men are fucking monster rapists? And on the one hand, I understand why, as a man, you might appreciate some space being carved out. But on the other hand, when women band together and say, like, let's take back the night from rapists, you don't have to take that personally. Like, you don't have to feel compelled to say not all men. That goes without saying. I don't think the majority of women think all men are always going to assault
contrary,
them. Right.
Yeah.
They're like hoping, they're hoping that the world is fine. So like, I think Harvey Keitel is a misguided attempt for them to be like,
I agree.
Well, we don't want dudes watching the movie thinking they should just go home and shoot themselves for being men. And I'm like, I see what you were going for, but it's already such an undertold story. You don't need a dude savior.
Yeah.
You can have them just interact with bad dudes. It's fine.
Or like, I understand why they would add him for male audience members. Like, you know, they wanted couples to go. So it's like, go with your, look, you know, there's a detective helping.
And again,
like,
I think most dudes watching the movie are gonna side with the protagonist because they aren't like violently misogynistic.
Right, exactly.
So they, I'm sure, appreciate Keitel being in there. The other weird thing about it, though, is, or not weird, but like, did you find it impactful if you separate it from all and just treat it as a movie maneuver? Because I thought it was, I did think it's kind of brilliant to introduce a character who is chasing them, and it's a blank-faced, stone-faced Harvey Keitel who says no lines. So you assume, even down to the fact that they cast Harvey Keitel, that he's going to be some like hard-nosed motherfucker out to get these women. And when he finally, for the first time ever in the movie, reveals his opinion at all, it's surprising to find out that his opinion is, fuck you, Brad Pitt. Do you realize you endangered these women? I'm trying to bring this to a peaceful conclusion, you motherfucker. I was actually like, just as a filmmaking thing, I was like, oh, you didn't see that coming. It's cool. It's a cool. You don't expect the FBI. You don't expect the cop. It's like watching The Fugitive. If when he has the gun on Harrison Ford in the pipe and he's gonna dive, if he said, "I didn't do it," and he's like, "I do care. Let's talk about that," you would be like, "Whoa, I didn't expect that from the cop." It's interesting.
I think it's interesting. I had a completely different read from the performance. Yeah, like I thought his character wasn't a savior. I mean, he's a good cop in that he wants this to not have a violent resolution.
He wants fewer people to die.
Right.
That's all.
And so in that regard, yeah, but he's not. That's not a savior complex. I thought what he was doing was trying to talk to them, and in fact used another technique that men use against women a lot, which is the "oh honey" kind of thing.
Right, but then so why didn't they? It makes Susan Sarandon look stupid.
What?
Like strategically speaking?
Yeah, strategically.
No, I think they truly believe that they're gonna go to jail.
Yeah, but he's there. Well, yeah,
but
they're gonna go to jail.
Can we all agree that they're super bad at crime all throughout?
Yeah,
they're new
both
at crime.
of them.
Yeah.
Why does Susan Sarandon give her money to hold on to? Why didn't she hide it herself in her own room somewhere?
Right.
They're really bad at crime, and I think that's forgivable because these are not people who went out to do a crime spree.
No,
they're like improvising crimes.
Right.
But nevertheless, like there's never any question. And I think that helps build the sense of dread. You don't think they're going to get away with it. Even if you've never seen the movie before, you're like, the cops are all over this from the beginning. Like, they have this in it.
Yeah.
I want to read something.
And then Michael Madsen has that romantic scene that really works for me. And then he does rat, like, after the fact.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah, he's
Go
a
ahead.
shit. I found two quotes from film critics because I wanted to ask a question, which is this movie, in your opinion, like a critique of a society's critique of feminism and gender roles in society, or is it Hollywood like dipping its feet into like the idea of women's roles and just doing fan service to the concept? Because and just in a like follow-up question, is that good or bad for society? The two quotes that I want to read are, at the time they came out, these are what critics said. So one of them is Los Angeles Times. Sheila Benson was arguing that objects to the characterization of the film as feminist, arguing that it's more preoccupied with revenge and violence than feminist values. And on the counterpoint, New York Post film critic Kyle Smith says he describes the film as a, quote, misogynistic tale about unbelievably ditzy women who lose what remains of their reason under pressure and suffer the ultimate punishment.
I do think just that guy's sitting there thinking, if I was in this situation, I'd do the crimes way better. I'd be way good at the crimes.
Right.
Like that. Fuck that guy.
Yeah.
So that was the response.
That's not the point of the movie.
That was the
Yeah.
response at the time of this movie, is people saying, everyone immediately going like, yeah, this movie is about like feminism. Let's stand behind this, which is, I think, Hollywood taking advantage of that. It's written by Callie Curry, who also she almost directed for a while, and then when it came to it, she backed down from the project, and 40 directors were considered for this
Before Ridley Scott.
Yeah, and almost none of them women. But yeah,
Wait,
she wrote.
what did Callie Curry do later?
She then later did directed and wrote Yaya Sisterhood.
Yeah, which we've covered.
So she writes a lot of movies like this. This script had been around for like decades. In fact, it was like in the 70s or something.
It feels like a 70s movie.
Yeah.
I've seen so like there's like a lot of like rape revenge like movies made in the 70s, and it feels like I think it's a good faith attempt to do a look at gender roles. I do think that. I don't think it's like trying to take advantage of anything, and I don't think Ridley Scott went in being like, oh yeah, like this will make me look like a feminist. Like I think it's a really great attempt, and I do like love this movie. Like I said, like it makes me cry every single time. But yeah, I understand.
With this Kyle Smith, this
Yeah,
Kyle
I
Smith
kind
guy.
of not that I don't think they're ditzy. I think they.
Ditzy's a total mischaracterization.
Yeah.
I think
I don't
Ditzy's
think
but you guys
that.
mentioned about how they're bad at crime, and
I don't think it's bad at crime.
I think it's weird that he took from that, they must be stupid. I totally got the read that this is a more grounded,
I
realistic
agree.
crime film than you're used to. Unlike most movies where you throw a normal person into a crime spree and suddenly they perfectly logically think ahead, these women act like a character, like a real person. Like you do the best thing you think of at the time. Later you realize you could have done better, but you just keep moving forward. They acted very believably to me. Like the crime spree actually seemed very realistic in that way.
The only thing that didn't seem realistic to me was the cops. And every time we like
Brad
cut
Pitt's
back to
kind
them,
of magical.
not Brad Pitt. Oh, I loved Brad Pitt.
Everyone loves Brad
Specifically,
Pitt in this movie.
That was like
No, I know you're
perfect.
not
Oh my
saying that,
God.
but I'm saying that I think Brad Pitt reads as kind of magical, and I do want to figure out. So I think Brad Pitt actually. So the fact that he gives her first like real meaningful orgasm she's ever had, which I do think is a very feminist thing for a movie from this era to have discussed. That like. Yeah, that dude was not fucking his wife right. And it is life-changing for her to have had like good sex with Brad Pitt, like of all, I mean, especially Brad Pitt. So, but then he robs them, right? So he's not like a great dude. And that is the worst of crime moment, I think, is he goes, I'm a robber. This is how I rob people. He teaches her how he robs people.
Right.
And she goes, okay, I'm going to step out of the room with the money on the nightstand.
Yeah.
Bye,
Bye,
naked
Bye.
robber. But
I love when she robs later
Yes.
and does his speech. That is
Right,
so
yeah.
great.
It's satisfying.
all the
Yeah.
acting is so good. Even her shitheel husband she leaves behind, he fucking acts the shit out of that role. What? Well, she's on the run, sir. What? But,
Christopher McDonald, yeah.
he's amazing.
Yeah.
And he's that guy to me.
he's Shooter McGavin.
He's always good. But I feel like the reason that there's room for people to argue that it could be misogynist, or maybe it's not, or maybe it's not, is there are scenes that have real nuance. I actually think it's realistic more than it.
Yeah.
So, for example, Susan Sarandon at first does the thing that if this was like a cookie cutter feminist treatise, a woman would not do to another woman, which is blame her for being raped.
Right.
Yeah,
But
but,
you're
it's
How is that
realistic.
not
I
my
was like,
fault?
that
But
has
she only-
happened in
right.
relationships before.
And if
between
you were,
friends.
I would say if you're making like a feminist like textbook, a woman would not do that to another woman. But if you're making a realistic thing, yeah, she might, because she's thinking about the murder that's on her hands. And then a second later, she might go, "Oh my God, I can't believe I said that." Wow.
Yeah.
Even
Which is kind
women
of what
are
happened,
conditioned
yeah.
by society to blame the woman sometimes.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I think it gets at a more realistic, grounded. I think it is a good faith attempt. And because it's made by a man, there are going to be like
I think
sexist
really
things
that's just
encoded
what it is.
subconsciously.
Yeah.
But I really think it's like a really realistic, nuanced attempt to figure out what would really happen.
Yeah.
And there's even stuff that confuses me. My mom's a rape victim. We ended up having like a meaningful talk about like, why did she want to have sex with a stranger right after having almost been raped? That's weird to me because I'm a man and I can't wrap my head around what it would feel like. And she tried to like communicate that to me. So I do think it's, I think it's a good faith attempt. And I think the second thing is that
honest.
it's also a genuine attempt to simply make a buddy road movie that really works.
Yeah.
And it succeeds on that level.
Absolutely.
That's what I like about it.
I think their relationship and the way it's like written, the way it's acted is like so real. That's why I cry every time. Like I, like have a Thelma to my Louise. I have like a best friend that I like held in the hospital when she was born.
And she always fucking your shit
She
up,
was fucking
ruining your
fucking
life.
shit up. Always, God, always leaving our bags of money everywhere where Brad Pitt can take it.
I have to say, Maggie is dressed like all you'd have to do is pull your beanie down over your face and you'd be ready to rob a
Oh my
convenience
God.
store.
Yeah, I do.
I thought you were
I
gonna
do
say
look a little
you
shady
look
right
like
now.
Brad Pitt.
Oh, and you'd look like Brad Pitt.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you really do look like Brad Pitt.
Guys, this was going whatever.
Please put a shirt on.
There is a lot of real expert filmmaking in this movie that I didn't know. This was my first time watching it.
Right. Yeah.
Did you
I
know
knew
the
all
big
the
ending?
bits.
Okay, you know
Yeah,
the
I knew
twist.
the endings because it's like such a important movie that it's just like, so what's Jurassic Park about? It's like
You
if
know.
you hadn't,
Yeah.
and
Did
so
you
I knew
cry?
most of it.
Did you cry?
I don't cry a lot
Did
during
you
movies.
Abe? Did you
I
cry?
I was bawling.
Somebody
I was like
called the
heaving.
wind.
I
was
bawled in
heaving.
the final scene.
I
Yeah.
didn't cry. I definitely was like, oh, this is fucking good. This is a good movie.
And how good is a movie that knows when to fucking end? Fade to white
Yeah.
fucking credits
Yep.
now.
Yep.
So good.
It's like that reminded me of Whiplash a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just like ending while you're on top. Just like, and that was that moment, and you don't need to know.
Yeah,
you
you
don't
don't
need to
need
wrap
it.
shit up.
You saw it.
At all. That's not what the movie's
Yeah.
about. So there's some like real this film took me to school, man. Like this film, Ridley Scott he made. I want to watch like Gladiator or something that's more recent. By him.
That's also really, really good.
And because like
forgot that
there's
one.
so many hidden little things in this movie
'Cause
that
he's
I go
fairly
like,
transparent.
I go, holy
Yeah.
shit! Like that is so. One of them is how mirrors work in this world. There's like 3 beats of mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
The first notable one is just crafts a great moment, which is after the murder, Susan Sarandon goes into the bathroom
Yes,
and
I
she
wrote that
sees a
down.
little spot of blood and she
and
cleans it up.
scrubs it more than she needs to. Like that's a great
Yeah.
acting
Right.
moment. Like,
Yeah.
get the blood fucking
There were
off
so
me.
many
Yeah.
beautiful gems like that. Gina Davis, just watching her on screen is so fascinating because she's very guarded in a way, just like as a human, but also like as an actor. And watching her like dip in and out of when she's guarded and like when she's not is just like mesmerizing.
And them nailing the buddy comedy thing. Like it's almost like The Hangover where it's like they are both so specific and cool
I wrote down, I was
characters,
like, what do I do with the gun? She's like, I don't know, put it in my purse. And I'm like, what?
So I thought that was that was a
finish
good,
the mirrors
yeah.
thought.
Well, there's a second beat with the mirror where Louise, it's when Thelma is robbing the market.
Yeah.
That she realizes now that they're not dressed up.
Oh,
they're
I know
like,
exactly.
The
Yeah.
transition is starting to really take hold where they're now renegades essentially.
Right.
And they have that fucking convertible. That's amazing.
Thunderbird.
And they're like arguing, and I can't remember why, but it felt motivated for. She looks over to a diner where the car is parked right next to and sees an old woman.
Two old women.
Two old women. And they're giving
This is
like.
my favorite shot. They are Thelma and Louise.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the we're all woman baby
Yeah.
moment.
I don't think so.
But those women are like trapped behind a
they were
window.
judging
Trapped
her.
behind
They were
they're
judging.
judging her because
Yeah.
she goes to the mirror. Susan Sarandon goes
Yeah.
to the
To
mirror
put lipstick
and is
on.
going to put lipstick on, and then basically goes "fuck it."
Right.
So she's
That's
like,
my
I don't
favorite
care
moment.
how you look at me and how I appear. I'm doing this thing.
Oh, but I also think, I didn't read Judgment. I thought it was total sisterhood. I thought it was
No,
like
straight
it's
up
definitely
lemonading
it's Judgment,
right there.
and then right after that is when the cops run out. So implying that maybe those old women told the cops.
But I also think visually there's some symbolic work going on about how these old women are, their life is equally sad. They're like hothouse flowers behind a window.
That's exactly
and they're
right.
already old.
That's why
and they're bitter at.
you're sympathetic with Louise there because you're like, that's why she doesn't care, because they're from a generation and a time where they're like, women do this and it's weird.
Just stay over there.
And it's like, why are you throwing shade at me all of a sudden, old people?
Yeah.
You know,
like we're the same. How can you look at me like, but I mean, it's the same. It's the way that like mother-daughter relationships work.
Right.
Like a lot of them are super fucked up because it's a very similar, like they've been placed in such a box and they see their daughters do things that they could never do. And it's just like, resentment
and
just
it's
builds and builds and
they
builds.
equated that with like, well, you're not acting like a proper lady. You're not fulfilling the role.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't allowed to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great moment. I also love shortly after that, she trades all her jewelry for a cowboy hat.
Right.
So, and then later she takes that douchebag trucker's hat. So by the end,
they're both
like they're clearly cowboys. And by the end, they've stolen hats, which are the ultimate cowboy trophies from men, and are like, "This is me now. This is my hat."
And then the only thing I wanted to say last, just because I think that the metaphor of Thelma or Louise looking in the mirror. There's also a few other beats with it, like when Thelma first sees Brad Pitt, it's a mirror reveal.
Yeah.
You don't look through the mirror, but you can see Brad Pitt, which is a great shot. You can see his body back behind the car. She's not looking in his direction. She looks in the mirror and then like taps her hand on the door of the car, and that like kind of gives him like, oh, okay, I can come in and like talk to you now. And it's just that was a cool little thing, but that doesn't really go with the theory. The only last piece of the theory is that in the final, like not the final chase where they die, but the one previous to it where they're driving through, like they almost get away. It's before the helicopter and they're just, all these cops are after them. They hit like 4 cars during that.
Yeah.
And all
the
4
side mirrors
are knocked off.
Yeah.
So it's like this movie fucking hates mirrors because what they represent to women.
Those
And I thought that was that's fucking cool.
Yeah.
That's a really, because it's like this internal struggle, then it's an external struggle, and then it's like, you know what, fuck this mirror.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good. Plus, just real basic directing
Basic
stuff.
like the first shot going from black and white to color is like, oh, they're escaping out to a new vibrant reality.
Sure, yeah.
There's stuff all throughout that just
all
makes
throughout.
a lot of sense.
I mean, if you really want to be taken to school, because this is what I actually did, is after I watched it, I started watching select scenes again because I wanted to count about how many times does the movie, and we've lost this entirely in cinema. We just don't care about it anymore. It's called the basic sequence is what we do now. And it's like, if there's a shot between you and me, Maggie, there'd be a 2-shot or a wider shot, and then a shot of you, and then a shot of me. Usually over the shoulder or, you know, looking kind of at each other. And you can get most things on film, most scenes with that, except for like, you know, martial arts scenes and action movies and stuff. This movie is just a talking movie for the most part, except for the car chases. So that's in its own thing, which, as you alluded to, Mike, he's also very good at. But the basics, he just never does the basic sequence in this movie. It's played entirely on a 2-shot the whole time, or there's choreography so that her shot is now her shot. And they just make it interesting because they knew they're like, what's 50% of this movie? 2 women sitting in a car talking.
Right.
How do you make that visually interesting? And that's when Ridley Scott was like,
I'll step in. I can do
get
this.
Him drunk.
Get him drunk.
I will say the movie is like an
they
ad.
really do drink.
It's an ad for drinking and driving.
Wild turkey specifically.
It makes it look really easy and fun, and like no one will get hurt. It's fine.
Right.
Just drive drunk.
Just drive drunk.
Yeah, and they take the time to do the moments I think you got to do in a story like this, like where they stop and see the desert dawn and like.
Ah, that's so beautiful.
I also think, I know Abe has. Have you ever taken acid overnight in the desert? Like, have you ever been coming down from an acid trip at dawn in the desert?
No.
Okay.
It's on my to-do list.
We'll do that right after this.
Yeah.
Great.
But it really felt exactly like that feeling. And I bet some listeners will know what I mean. Where when she says, great lines, I'm wide awake, I feel so awake, I've never been so awake. Where it's, I really think the acting captures the feeling of it doesn't only feel good. Like, it doesn't only feel like they did it. They broke out of the cage.
Yeah.
They're also like drug-addled, sleep-deprived, and deluding themselves. Like, you experience the dread where they're like, I guess we're going to die now. Yeah. Wow. Like, there's this weird manic energy to it. And I just think the whole third act of the movie, because after an acid trip, because acid won't let you sleep, if you take it at night and stay up all night and see the dawn, seeing dawn blows your mind. But also your body is like shaking and like empty inside, like it needs food and rest and shit. And I got that same like raw feeling from the
they're impeccable shots and stuff. Like it's like one of those like warrior mythos where
Susan
it's like
Sarandon is a great shot.
Crack shot.
Oh my god.
And I also wanted that scene might be my favorite. I also want they chose for the car that he drives, the truck that he drives, just a big penis.
Yeah.
It's just a huge metal rod. And it just blows. They just blow it up. Do a like fucking.
No, they blow it up.
It's not the kind of movie where you expected a giant explosion and they still got one in.
Yeah, but it's more effective because of how like real it's been, and that's like kind of after the like double sex the double sex scene, which I think that's my favorite.
The
like,
comparison is neat.
Yeah, the comparison, and it just feels like so like real. Like I've been in those conversations with people that I love on both sides, and
I love how it seems like it's showcasing Jimmy and Susan reconnect in exactly the way that like a long-term relationship would, and meanwhile Gina Davis is having exactly a textbook one-night stand, and it's like showing how lovemaking can be at least these two different things.
I think this is really
it compares sorry, I just want to compare real quick too. The only other time I usually, now that I'm an adult and like when I was a kid and sex was a mystery, obviously sex scenes have an appeal. Now, graphic sex scenes, I usually find boring because I could have sex or watch sex if I need to. So, like, I'm like, this better mean something. And when it's just Jon Snow having sex with, like, that lady in the cave, I'm like, that was a waste of my goddamn time. There's very few movies that pass that test for me. This one and History of Violence.
History of Violence.
History of Violence. Best use of sex scenes to give like insight into the character's situation through sex. So interesting.
I'm gonna throw a third one on there. Desperado.
Whoa!
The Spurs. You're talking the Spurs going over the titties.
It's like
right?
the most over the top like sex scene ever because you have these
Wet Hot
really
American
handsome.
Summer has a decent sex scene.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't want to because I think this is a very valuable point. And I want to keep talking about it, but I did want to. I laughed when I researched this. So Ridley Scott was going to use a body double for Gina Davis, and there were two things. One, the process for auditions was really interesting in this movie, which I always got to give credit to a director who uses like an interesting approach stylistically to something like this. And in this one, it was they had all four main like male roles except for Harvey Keitel, but like the boyfriends or the husbands,
Michael Madsen,
and
Brad
JD,
Pitt.
they all had him, and Harland, the guy who was actually the rapist. They had them read all of the roles. Ooh. Which is great because they're all like unique assholes.
Yeah,
but they're all
very
misogynist.
specific.
Yeah, and so I thought that was pretty interesting. But
how upset would you be if you did all the roles, went through the audition process, and they gave you Harlan? Because that
means you're the most.
We've thoroughly determined you're the most naturally hateable, and you'll get the smallest part, and it'll be a part you will not be proud to show your friends and family.
Actors have to think because it's especially when actors get typecast, they think, okay, I guess I'm just the guy. It's blank. You know?
It's in Gary Oldman. If you don't count the Batman movies, it's like he must go around thinking, do people just look at me and do I just radiate evil? Why do people think I'm a bastard?
Yeah,
like why? What's wrong with my face?
But when Gina Davis saw the audition tape for Brad Pitt,
oh, no.
she was like,
she had her first orgasm.
She was like, I don't need a body double.
That's him. and I don't need a body double.
Oh, snap.
That is a true
like,
story.
Can you not feel it? Like the kinetic
Oh, yeah,
energy
they
between
fucked off
those
screen.
two
You
actors.
really did.
so?
Oh, yeah.
my
If they were both single at the
God.
time, I don't know all the details.
Yeah, I don't know the details.
I mean, but it just jumps off screen. I love when that happens because it's such like magic. It's
Yeah.
pure like casting, directing, and just like body chemistry, and you can.
And
just
was this
feel it.
how early is this in Brad Pitt's fame? Is he
This
unknown?
is his breakout role.
So it is great. It was a real moment. It's not like her noting another actor. It's
Right.
her being like that random
That is
dude.
it.
There's a,
He's
that dude.
pretty hot.
There's an
And she
American.
wasn't wrong. All of
Yeah.
society came to agree.
There's an American French movie called
Called Le Fuck Brad Pitt.
Betty Blue, I think it is, and it's they shot the movie, and it's a love story, and the two actors fell in love during the movie, and they went back and reshot like most of the
because
act one.
the love scenes
because-
would be way
And they
better.
just
Wow.
straight up, and they were just like, so
But it
here's,
worked,
they're
yeah.
just like, we're just gonna
Damn.
fuck on right now,
Oh,
like that's
wow.
what we're gonna do.
Again, I'm like, so like Brown Bunny, where he gets a blowjob on screen.
Right.
It's real. I'm like, it strikes me as artistically hollow and just a waste of
Well,
time.
yeah,
But whatever. I think the idea of people really being in love would bring something to the performance. Having them really fuck is just that thing where you're like, I like getting attention for pushing the envelope.
It was
you know?
the '60s, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Easy Rider.
Yeah.
Let's
But
then you
direct
get
while
shit-
dropping acid. Yeah.
But then you get shit like what's that Brandon movie, Last Tango in Paris, where
Right.
that woman you're essentially watching a real rape.
Yep.
Yep.
Like you shouldn't watch that movie.
No, I don't.
And
I
shit like that
never.
shouldn't be allowed to happen.
Yeah.
I do not believe that directors should be tyrants, and I think it
No,
should be
yeah.
an open dialogue the whole way. I like to
Definitely.
think that that's how my actors think of me.
But oh yes, they do certainly. You're no James Franco, but it's nice to encounter a case where in real life it wasn't like awkward, uncomfortable, or wondering like, is this okay?
Right.
Right.
It was like, he's hot.
Yeah.
I'm fine pretending to fuck him, and he's probably like, she is too. This is gonna be
Yeah.
fun.
Hey, we're getting paid.
Everyone's just gonna have a good time.
and then I'm gonna have a huge career.
Yeah, man, that worked out for Gina Davis.
Damn.
Fucking, I wonder if she ever calls him at night and it's like,
like,
I
"Hey,
made
buddy."
you,
I made
bitch.
you.
Well,
If I didn't
Yeah.
like those abs, you wouldn't have nearly the career you have.
That was the same with
You're nothing, Pitt.
Amanda Bynes and Channing Tatum. It just came out that she was the one who, for She's the Man, which is his breakout role, he had only done a Mountain Dew commercial. She was like, that is him, and women are gonna love him. And she was right. And
Yeah.
she
Wow.
picked him out of nothing.
Is yummy.
Yeah, he is yummy.
He is yummy indeed.
When you see Channing Tatum's butt in This Is the End, that's when I feel that I have like a place on the sexual spectrum. That it's clearly like, I'm like, that
Look
is-
at that butt.
That's a good butt.
Yeah, that's a real good butt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he has that Brad Pitt vibe, which I think is why they cast Brad Pitt in this partly too, is where, and no one should judge people at face value or put themselves in dangerous
Because you can't control your
circumstances.
face.
No, because you can be charming and be a fucking animal monster.
Right.
But Brad Pitt was clearly cast as a contrast to Harlan, where it's
Right.
like he radiates this kind of Chris Pratty charm, Channing Tatum charm, where it doesn't seem like he
He's
would
very
assault
kind,
you,
Right.
which
yeah.
is a low compliment for Brad Pitt. But he looks like he wouldn't assault you.
Yeah.
America's sexiest man alive. And I think it's very clear that their sex scene is played for contrast. Like his style of lovemaking
Yeah.
is all around physical consent.
Right.
They make a big point of like, he leans in to kiss partway, waits for her to lean in, he leans in a little more, and then she finishes, where you're like, okay.
All right. Yeah.
It's different than Harlan. I mean, this is obvious shit, but the movie's so it never takes its eye off the ball. Like the symbolism is not sophisticated, but it's very tight. It's well
Very
laid out.
tight, yeah.
It's straightforward, and like it goes down smooth. Like I find it
Yeah.
an engaging movie too.
You want to hear something that's so this is 91, and just because we have a Coen Brothers podcast also, I read this when Callie Curry was writing this. Usually writers, when they're writing a screenplay, have in their head what the character looks like, usually use an actor or something like that, or a performance that you liked. Sometimes that's a technique.
I always imagine Weird Al and all
Yeah,
the roles.
always.
I play.
The ones for Thelma and Louise, Holly Hunter and Frances McDormand.
Whoa.
Oh, is who Callie Curry had in mind?
Yeah.
I see that.
I
That's-
want that remake.
I
I want it.
Fucking
That's really
rules.
good.
Yeah.
I mean, Sarandon,
Woo!
Davis,
Oh,
you fucking killed it.
Have you guys seen
But
The Long
also-
Kiss Goodnight?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gina Davis is such a fucking legit action star. You should
I
see The
love-
Long Kiss Goodnight.
Yeah.
Gina Davis as a CIA operative with amnesia.
Woo!
Yeah.
And Samuel Jackson comes and activates her, and she has to go on a mission. It's fucking awesome.
Fucking awesome. League of Their Own is all, she kills it in
I
that
haven't
as
seen
well.
that.
Whoa.
We'll have to
Oh,
cover
yeah.
that on
That's
this
a
show.
great-
So that is a great.
And it's a baseball movie, which
Yeah.
is even better.
That's why I haven't seen it.
That's why you haven't
Yeah.
seen it, because
Oh.
it's baseball.
Sports at all.
It's a
Yeah.
good.
It's good.
It's Tom Hanks.
The only thing I like about playing sports is playing sport. Like, I enjoy physically doing it. It's boring to watch, and it's boring to watch movies about it as well, in my
Yeah.
opinion. But
Other
other than Moneyball, weird stealth.
than Moneyball,
I hate Aaron Sorkin and I hate
Weird.
baseball. How did that work?
I don't know.
Brad Pitt. That's
Brad
the answer.
Brad Pitt.
No Gina Davis though. Yeah. Shit. What was I gonna say?
Frances McDormand and Holly Hunter would
Yeah,
kill this.
I think
Yeah,
that's
wow.
a shout out to just like Raising Arizona's influence, because this is also post Spielberg. Like, so after 1977, which is when Jaws was made, they completely fucked up the industry. Right? They talk about how in the 80s you had the death of you had the rising of a different type of picture, which was the blockbuster, which cost so much money that they took all the money from other types of movies. So you had like these middling to moderate level things, like movies like Raising Arizona or Thelma and Louise, which I think was like 16 million or something like that, or maybe higher than that. But you have this creation of this like middle tier, like the middle class of movies, and they didn't know what to do with those movies because they're hard to brand them and stuff like that.
Right.
So they all decided, let's just try to be Oscar bait. Now, here's the thing with this movie: it didn't win. It lost to, and it lost in multiple categories too. Let me pull it up.
and yet,
It
I always have to
and it's
shimmy
for
in.
one reason.
Who care? Fuck the Oscars. Their taste
Oh
is
yeah, fuck
terrible.
the Oscars, but just in terms of like,
I'm
if
sure
you
your
do well
story
at
is
the
interesting,
Oscars,
but I'm saying
you will
Right.
get jobs
Yeah.
and careers are made at the
Yes,
Oscars.
of course,
and stuff.
of course.
But yeah, they're both nominated, which has only happened 4 times before, where it's like both Best Actress, same movie kind
Right.
of thing. Because
Right.
obviously that's what this movie is. It lost to Jodie Foster, or they lost to Jodie Foster because 1991
Wait, was that-
Silence
The
of the
Silence of the
Lambs.
Lambs.
And Silence of the Lambs.
I was like, for fucking Friday the 13th or whatever. What's the one she's
Oh.
in?
And Ridley Scott was
Halloween.
nominated for Best Director, but lost to Jonathan Demme, also from Silence of the
Denny,
Lambs.
yeah.
funny.
And Callie Curry tried to
to
get
who?
the Best Original Screenplay
Yeah.
Oscar, but no, lost to Silence of the Lambs.
I find that movie kind of overrated, personally.
Silence of the Lambs. I was
I-
surprised when I first saw it
I've
because
seen
I was
it
like, oh,
lots of times,
Huh.
and I'm always bored except when Anthony Hopkins is talking.
I think it's a really good movie.
I think it's
I
good.
know most people do.
I was definitely not blown away.
I
by
did not
it from
feel
what I heard
intense
about it
dread,
before.
or like when I found out. Yeah, when I found out that in the pantheon of film history, it swept the Oscars that year.
yeah, I didn't.
I was like, that's
Yeah.
surprising.
Right.
I thought that would be Shawshank or something. They're like, no, actually, that was widely overlooked. I'm like, well, fuck the Oscars.
yeah. I mean, fuck the
Movie,
Oscars.
though. I like it. Jodie
that's
Foster rocks. I see why she won.
That's
Yeah,
a frame
yeah.
rate of
I
film.
mean, not to say that
And
this
speaking
wasn't
of just,
a great performance,
yeah.
but
So sheer
I get it.
badassness. I also want to compare it to. Have you ever seen Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid?
yeah,
What do
very
you
similar.
think about it,
Ooh, it's been
Max?
so long since I've seen it.
Okay.
that,
Definitely similar endings.
I just watched it for the first time recently, and I don't think it holds up through new eyes. It's very structurally loose and lazy. Like, to me, it doesn't hold a candle to Thelma and Louise, and it's trying to do the same thing. Like,
Yeah,
it's introducing these buddies, and it's like nothing particular will happen. Because what's funny is in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, there's no real symbolism other than the classic symbolism of the Wild West gets destroyed by law
Right.
encroaching. But it's harder to sympathize with that than like I got raped, but I can't go to the cops because they won't believe me because it's a man's world. You're like, yeah, that is really heavy, real shit we need to deal with. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is the classic, like, nah, they're cool because they're outlaws. Let's just see them do cool stuff.
Yeah.
At the end, they're forced to jump off a cliff. and you're like, that was cool. And it's just so similar to Thelma and Louise that I had it in my mind when watching Thelma and Louise. And in like a fighting game, right? Like Thelma and Louise would fucking destroy Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Right.
Like, and in terms of the impact that when their car goes off the Grand Canyon lip, I was sitting typing notes with like blank robot movie watching face. When that shot happens, I just went and like started bawling. When I watched Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, they jump off the cliff and I go, interesting. I can see why that was like a fresh choice at the time. Right. You usually didn't kill your hero in that era of film. I don't know what it meant. Well, that's done. Like Thelma Louise blows it out of the water.
Oh, man. This time I started crying right after Gina Davis where she talks to their best friend and it was like, I had like the orgasm. And I think a lot of women have that memory of like, oh, this is when I know what sex is. Like I've had sex, but this is when I understood it. And, and that's
somebody's had sex
with Brad Pitt. I assumed you were saying all women are visited by Brad Pitt at some point.
Yes, and are taught
Tooth Fairy.
Sex. Yes. Yeah. But that is when I started bawling because that's such like like just a defining moment and knowing what comes in the end, that's when I started crying. And then throughout the rest of the film, it had such like everything had a heavy weight to it because like I know what happened. So like, and they're happy, like even when they're like looking at the sky and like they've kind of settled into this like, no, let's just like enjoy this for what it is. Right. Yeah. We know we're not gonna make it, but
Gina says I wouldn't go back anyway at a certain point. Like I feel like I'm a robber now.
Yeah. Or like really I'm awake. Yeah. That like that sentiment is so like just like pure tragedy in its like purest form.
Yeah, because they have their options are severely limited by the misogynistic system. So to keep their dignity, they just have to wild out.
Like it's great. This is it.
Whereas it's interesting when I compare it to like other idols, like duos that are idolized in the same way, like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It's like they chose to do crimes because they felt like it. It's less compelling. I really like Thelma and Louise as characters. I think they need a pop culture resurgence. Like, I never see anyone with a fucking Thelma and Louise tattoo or anything.
That's where I like for me, like when I was first watching it, I had heard of it as there like is implied love between the two characters as a queer film.
I didn't pick up on that per se, but I did make a note of like also how much more. It's interesting how you can do more with women in these roles than if when Susan Sarandon actually like kisses her on the mouth. I just thought she was doing it as a friend, but at the same time, if Bradley Cooper did that to Zach Galifianakis, it would not make you like cry. Right. But she says like, you're like, we're going to die together now. That's what good friends we are. I have to kiss you. We do live in a society right now where that's something two women can do and it makes me like cry. Yeah. And if two dudes try to do it, it would be harder. There would have to be more setup to like build to it. Yeah. But please, I didn't know even that was a like conspiracy theory.
I mean, the kiss was talked about a lot in 91 because it was 1991.
Because to me, it seems just like, you kiss your girlfriend or whatever.
Right. Well, that is true. And that's a very real part of it. I think when it was being made, that was the intent. It's like that, just like that female love, friendship that's like so strong that it feels like romantic love. But no, there's like a very queer reading of it where it's like those two are together. They have like blown off the men in their life, either killing them or, breaking up with them, ditching out. And there's a lot of like dressing, undressing, and in the whole, like David Lean, he would do every time a man was dressing himself, it was implied that they had sex. Because you can put that in films back then. And there's like a little
the brown bag of sex.
Yeah. Right. And there's a little bit of that. But like I said, when I was watching it, none of that resonated with me. But
also art is great in that way. You can get what you get out of it.
Right.
Like if queer people are out there feeling inspired by Thelma and Louise, please, by all means.
Yeah.
Yes, but I didn't read that per se.
Right. And I didn't really see it anywhere, but I definitely see that reading, and I think it has value. And that kiss in the end is like, I mean,
hits me in the feels.
What is the difference between that and love? There isn't really a difference.
Because I wouldn't say that I necessarily prefer that reading of it one way or the other. It's a wonderful, tender moment between two people who do love each other, whether or not that's actual romantic love.
But if you are queer,
really relevant.
You're underserved by movies, so I could see why you might be looking for an angle to feel that it represents
I think
you.
most of it, like the whole Thelma and Louise and the aesthetic. But
it's
I think that's
shipping.
why it's exciting.
It's like fanfic, right?
Yeah, it's shipping. It's fanfic. But also, it's like I think in that way, it's like being embraced as like a Thelma and Louise. They're fucking dope as shit.
Just so it's not all a love fest, there was one thing that really bothers me. Has to be mentioned. There is exactly one black person in the film.
Yeah.
Smoking
He is
weed.
introduced smoking a giant blunt with waist-length dreadlocks blasting Bob Marley.
Yeah.
I understand you might be that person listening to this right now. All those things are great to do. I love smoking blunts. But when fucking British-ass Ridley Scott has a movie that takes place in like New Mexico and he casts one black dude and he's like, give him a blunt.
Yeah.
Let's blast some Bob Marley. What? I'm just like, all right with the stereotypes a little bit here. Like, ease off.
Yeah. It was really funny that he just blows the smoke into the
And that's it detracts
great.
from an amazing bit.
Yeah.
And I get why it was supposed to be a solidarity thing, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's like, who else gets harassed by the cops? Fucking black people.
Yeah.
But I don't think the movie had done enough work to support just having that shown by one instance where they're like, we want people to get the symbolism, so we better make him "quote unquote" really black.
Yeah,
like,
people better get it.
They better know he represents black people.
It is the definition of co-opting the message, but
still satisfying.
Still satisfying.
To have the
satisfying.
cops say, "Please let me out of the trunk," and you just hotbox the trunk and leave.
The thing that I saw that I was like took me out of it was actually earlier, but the same cop sequence where when the cop like saunters up to like he's wearing like
He's also got like a fucking hard body, dude.
Yeah,
he's hot as fuck.
Like
he's super sexy.
And like it was like it's not like it's a functional belt. It was like he looked like a strippergram.
He looks like he was wearing a sexy cop Halloween costume.
Right, exactly. And it's like angled in a way where he's gonna like I don't know why.
And that guy has blown up. He's the lead in like NCIS or something.
Oh, really?
Dumb like
That's him?
that. Yeah.
Weird.
I didn't recognize him.
Jason Beghe, Beghe.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. The weird thing about that scene is, and I like wonder if this was the intention. It's another one of those guys that kind of has that douchebag vibe. And when he asked her to go sit in the cop car, I was like, she's gonna be raped. Because that's what cops do. They ask you to go in their cars. You're not supposed to do that.
He's like, by the way, I also drive for Uber. You're like, get the
Right.
fuck out of there.
Right, exactly. Like every woman knows you don't sit in the cop car because
There's
anything
no reason
could
to
happen.
ask them to put.
Right, there's no reason.
other than handcuffing you and putting you in the back of the cop
right.
car.
If they arrest you.
I was like that, but then that ended up not happening. But he does give her a look that I was like, he's gonna rape her. He
The
gives
costume,
her this like
maybe they were trying to just generate that
I think
drag.
they were.
yeah, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
or I mean but then nothing happened. So I was like, I didn't know if that was supposed to
Not
make
only-
me feel that
I mean, it
way.
could have
Not only
happened.
nothing happens, but he's like, I don't want to say coward, because I would also cry and beg for survival if I had a gun in my hand.
Right.
But he's not gonna fuck with them. He doesn't want any trouble.
Yeah.
He's like immediately like, please,
Yeah.
my kids.
I have kids.
I'm just a highway
Yeah.
patrol douchebag. Yeah.
Out in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah. But I do wonder if like maybe that was the intent and then was decided that would be a little too much if we had
I don't
already
think they make it that way. I think
Yeah.
I think there's always something to be said, and I think about keeping things kind of at arm's reach, but not necessarily like on the nose or like pointing it out, because I think that that's the ambiguity that like Ridley Scott does like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We've seen it. I mean, we see it in Alien. You know, we see like
Prometheus is almost too mysterious. Like that's what people didn't like about it.
Yeah. But also just like implications of like, like you don't have all the relevant.
There's
pieces
more
of it.
going on than
like
you even
Charlize
see in the
Theron
movie.
in Prometheus. Her character doesn't. You don't know or realize that her character is like what, the daughter of Guy Pearce or whatever. So there's so much you have to go back and think about all the things that she said in the movie and why she is the way. Otherwise, you just think she's jaded captain.
Also, Reservoir Dogs had already happened, right? At this time?
90 or 91. So
maybe the same year.
It might be the same year.
Because I wonder about the idea of casting Madsen. I know that you talked about that casting call where they brought in these 4 guys.
Right.
Well, clearly he was brought in because he reads as a scary, like violent type of dude. And it's interesting that Jimmy actually is, I would say, a complex character, but not the worst guy in the world. Not the best guy either. You shouldn't start a conversation by throwing shit around the hotel room. But he gets to an okay place. You can tell he respects Susan Sarandon. But I do think Ridley Scott put effort into, I mean, the whole team put effort into cultivating the feeling, at least a tiny bit, that women constantly try to remind us that they deal with all the time.
Right.
So like even in minor interactions with extras, there was mild harassment. Like in the bar, someone just like staring at her ass as she walks by. Not an interchange. Just like, I do think there's this cultivated feeling of dread and constant. They're like low key harassed all the time, which is really effective.
Kind of like Get Out,
and
you know?
casting. It is. That's interesting. Maybe like,
I mean, it's not a Get Out for me because I guess I'm a woman, so I was like, oh yeah.
But I mean,
it's
the
not
horror
apples to
dread
apples
thing
where you're like, it's like Get Out, but for feminism. They're not that directly comparable, but the thought process behind building the world that way is definitely
I think so. I think if it's almost like trying to make a horror movie out by just taking a mirror and reflecting what the Earth is.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a horror show.
And so I really like, because I mean, I feel like if you've seen Reservoir Dogs ever, when Michael Madsen, the first shot, you go, well, he's going to do something awful. Like any movie you see him in, I'm sorry, it's too late, Mr. Blonde. So like that was another maneuver I thought was really effective. And I do think they were intentionally like, when you see Harvey Keitel, you think he's going to be a hard-ass cop. Then, surprise, he actually has kind of a good heart. When you see Michael Madsen, I think similarly, you're like, well, she probably left him because he slit her dog's throat in front of her or something, because that's the kind of shit he does. And then it turns out to be that, like, he's your classic Southern piece of shit with anger management problems, but like he's never done anything unforgivable. He's kind of a regular dude, which is shocked the shit out of me. I mean, it's like when you see Ray Liotta in like a straight to DVD movie where he's a big-hearted family man. I'm like, sorry, Ray Liotta. Can't do it. Can't see it.
Can't do it. Yeah, this movie is really just a misogynist like safari. Or like a all you can eat misogyny night at a diner kind of thing.
And I love that
like here's a flavor, here's a flavor, here's a little bit of
it's
JD.
a lot of different kinds. It's a multifaceted. It's beautiful. It's a diamond.
And what's amazing about that is
that's
that's
a hateful diamond.
That gives your classic buddy road movie that ends at a destination shape and like weight that they usually don't have. The only other one that comes to mind is that does for me is like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles because they do the thing where they're like, surprise, it was about the nature of grief and loneliness the whole time. And you're like, oh, that retroactively does give it structure and weight. Everything else is just like due date. Like the baby's going to be born on X day and our car broke down, so we have to go there. Thelma and Louise may be like the best road movie. It's so...
I think so.
Yeah,
it works.
Yeah,
It
definitely
I think
beats
so.
more levels.
It beats
well
Sugarland
shot.
Express, which is Spielberg's
Which is Spielberg,
second film. And that movie has the same kind of quality where like the world, like you have to ask about these scofflaws, which I guess is what they usually call them. Scofflaws.
Yeah.
Scofflaws. Yeah.
They scoff at the law.
Outlawed. Yeah.
But it would also work where it's like you've scuffed up the law. It's usually untarnished and you've tarnished it.
Right. There you go.
Either works.
Yeah, it's good save. But yeah, these types of movies usually had like there's a history of having them like are we the crazy ones or is the world crazy? And usually it ends with no, that you're crazy. So this is the best one because it reverses that trope, I think.
Right.
It's saying no, some aspects of the world are crazy and they crush people. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
hopefully one day it won't be.
Yeah, and therefore that's why I don't think, like, even though I know what you guys were saying earlier about Harvey Keitel and the savior figure and stuff like that, I think he's just legitimately trying to be nice to them and doing a thing like another form of like, excuse me, miss, kind of like kindness with like, I just want you to get the fuck back here so that we can put you in
so
jail.
the man can handle this situation.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Because he kind of honeys her on the phone.
Sometimes I wondered if he was just dripping honey, as they say. And like, if he got them back, he would throw the book at them. He doesn't want them dead, but he does. He is a cop.
I wish I'd gotten that inkling more. To me, it did throw it a little bit. That's the part that took it out of me.
He's like I can see how you're annoyed by like.
And it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a deal breaker.
But Harvey Keitel is like, if I am ever on a crime spree, that's the cop I hope is overseeing my case.
It seemed too good to be true.
He's almost perfectly
He's
nice.
calling them all the time. Like, he gives them multiple chances to be like,
he's at home throwing shade at her husband. Like, you should have treated your wife better and shit. And he's like advocating for her in her absence.
He gives them their first crime orgasm. So.
Yeah. It just seemed like a little just a little off. That was the only thing that I was like, I would have changed this had I been in control.
Fair. You don't really
nothing else would I have changed.
You really don't need him either. He's a
that's the other
character.
Thing.
You can take him out.
I do think he was added to either like fill out the bracket of like we need some guys on screen and or as companions to the women coming to see the film.
I think he's a literalization of the not all men thing.
I think that's closer to the truth.
I think it's that the probably dudes involved are like,
I think we're getting to it. That's what I wish wasn't
I want there to be one nice guy because that would be me. Like, I wouldn't assault anyone.
Yeah, I would like
Where's
be trying
to
make sure the right thing happens.
And they're like, well, Jimmy, and he's like, but I wouldn't even throw stuff. I mean, I want a really nice guy in there. You know, where's the nice guy? And I don't know if that was an active campaign or even Callie Curry just knew that they would want that.
Right.
That's because systems can apply pressure without a person actually having to come do it.
Right.
But I think for better or worse, Keitel is there to stand in as the guy who's not a douchebag.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I just think it taints the water a bit for me.
It's
like, oh, I know what that is and I don't need it. I know exactly what it is and I don't need that here.
As you get distance, like flubbed notes become clear, and that's what we call like being dated. I think the two things in this are the black dude riding the bike and it's Keitel's handwriting.
But like that's it. And like how amazing is that?
No, most movies from that time are way more dated.
Right.
If they're trying to comment on something real about society, they're usually much more backwards than Thelma and Louise is.
And this is so and it's so enjoyable through and through that hardly, makes much of a difference in the end.
Yeah.
It's
a well-crafted movie from the design to the execution.
But to see Keitel's penis, we would have to wait.
Yeah.
For the piano.
There's a weird, random runner plot wherein he and Brad Pitt just started going to town on each other.
Oh, yeah.
No, they happened to leave the camera on, and that just happened naturally. It was Harvey Keitel's turn to experience his first real orgasm.
And then Ridley Scott joins, strangely, and I'm like, what does the director say?
Now you're ripping off your friend's film.
Brad Pitt's just like, bring in the crew.
Bring him in.
Bring him in. I'm Brad Pitt.
It's just the magic of Brad Pitt.
Yeah, it's just a magical.
He leaves a wake of orgies wherever he travels.
Yeah.
I think so, though.
I don't know these days, but he certainly had a time.
Maybe not these days.
Maybe not.
Yeah. He's tired now. He always looks tired when he's
he's done a lot of movies.
Yeah. He deserves to be tired.
It reminds me, there's another I would say the other big famous like buddy criminals who are doomed traveling is Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah.
And their metaphor that they think is so like great that they package the whole movie around it is the gun is his dick. Get it? The gun is his dick. That's why he can only get an erection after they rob a bank. Mm-hmm. Isn't it crazy how a gun looks like a dick? Like to me, that is not.
Although this movie
has
like,
more shit going on.
Blows up a dick, so
that's amazing.
Blows up a giant. That guy.
The guy is just a
I understand.
whirlwind.
I'm sure that guy exists. I'm sure that guy exists because he knows he's alone in the desert.
Right.
So he can go wild out.
Yeah.
But even if I were a bad person, the shit he yells is like what Yosemite Sam would yell.
He's the Yosemite Sam of hatred.
I want to sex at you. Hey, you sex objects going by in your little sex car.
And I just love that they're like, their response to that, which is just like very like Sacha Baron Cohen-esque, which is like, what's that thing you're doing with your mouth? What's that all about? Like they're not even like making a joke or making fun of. They're just like, what do you think is happening right now?
Brad Pitt just leans over. He's like, that's not how you do it. You don't just stick your whole tongue out and then flap it up and down like an airplane wing.
Yosemite Sam.
Well, thank you, Vivian Liu, for giving me an opportunity to watch Thelma and Louise again. It's been a long time. My stepdad had never seen it.
Oh.
And when they went off the cliff, he went,
really?
Yeah, so yeah.
Oh, really?
It's a very impactful twist if you don't know.
Yeah.
It's so
but
much.
That Simpsons episode sort of ruined it for everyone in our generation.
Right, yeah.
Ruth
I feel
Powers
like
is Louise, basically.
I almost thought I had seen it. I was like, no, I've seen it. No, I haven't seen it.
At least 3 sketch shows I've seen
through
Thelma and Louise drive off the cliff, but then something else happens.
Another Thelma and Louise slam into him into midair.
What happens to Marge and Ruth? Oh, they crash into a landfill, so it's fine. Because they filled Springfield Gorge with garbage.
Oh.
It's a topic for a different podcast.
The Simpsons pod.
Thank you to Vivian. Thank you to Maggie Mae for being here.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Vivian.
Abe.
What's up, dude?
You're holding hands again.
That's how we podcast.
Whoa. Hey, everybody. Swaim here. With added excitement in my voice because it might equate to money for me. I just wanted to officially let everyone know, through the medium of audio rather than tweets, that Small Beans has a merch store now. Yeah, that's right. And this is not just some cash grab with the logos of our shows, although you can get logo tees there if you'd like. We worked very hard with several very talented artists to really present you with shirts and buttons and content to come that we really think is worth your purchase and you're going to enjoy. And if you're someone who hasn't been able to patronize us, this is a fantastic way to support Small Beans directly without having to sign up for Patreon. And of course, you get a physical item in return rather than just our glorious, glorious content, which will remain free, but is not free to make. So we'd really appreciate anyone who's willing to check out the SB merch store. It is at smallbeans.bigcartel.com, and there you will find a bunch of hilarious shirt designs, some limited edition buttons, as well as an ever-increasing amount of audio content to download. We're talking original rap songs, audiobook versions of short stories, and so on. And we're always brainstorming and trying to add new things to the shop, but we'll stop if no one goes there. So please check it out, smallbeans.bigcartel.com. And as always, we love you. 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 We love you.